listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
I wanna see the light.
Hello, everyone. I won't say Happy Thursday. Our prayers go out to the people of Great Britain this evening because they have lost their queen. Queen Elizabeth passed away earlier today. She was greatly admired by the people of Great Britain and by many people around the world. She was always dignified. As you know, and the British press were sure to show her as such whenever they showed her in public. She, there wasn't any. She had her moments of humor, but she was very, very dignified and will be greatly missed, not only in Great Britain but around the world as well. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Jerry Mitchell. Sitting in the supervisor's chair is Myra.
Good evening, everyone.
And we appreciate you being here whenever you listen. That's the great thing about podcasts is you can listen when it's convenient for you to listen. You don't have to be here live, but we appreciate it. If you like what you hear, we appreciate you sharing it out there. If you are so moved, you can leave us a comment. I had one earlier this afternoon on social media and gave me something to think about. Idea for another podcast topic. If you do happen to be new here, please check out GiveGod90.com. There's all kinds of good stuff there going on. It's just a good way to learn how to start a new lifestyle. I'll put it that way. I interrupted. It wasn't really a series, but it was the topic of evil in the world that I've been looking at and thinking about and digging into. And it's amazing that when you shine a light on evil, it begins to rage. It's like, not like the deer in the headlights. They just kind of stand there. When you shine a light, and I'm not talking about sunshine here, okay? But when you shine a light on evil, it gets confused, it gets dazed, and it begins to rage. More on that in a little bit. And that happens. So we're going to continue. Hopefully, this will be the last segment on this part of it, or this aspect of it, because I want to look at sorcery, witches and witchcraft, all that kind of good stuff. And the other day when we looked at giving evil more credence than it deserves, we looked at how evil can influence, right? Because, face it, you're influenced by everything you see, everything you hear. And if it's evil, you're going to be affected by it in some way. And other times, some things just happen, right? Things just sometimes happen. Several weeks ago, we did an episode on Christian witches. And that kind of sent me down this path a little bit on how people just kind of have accepted magic, especially what we call black magic, and even witches and warlocks today. Even the typical good Christians, and I say that in a very general sense, they accept things like the old Disney movies as good family films, right? But Disney's depiction of sorcery and witchcraft have given us a false sense of security when it comes to these things. Today we're going to dig a little deeper into the ways that evil can influence our lives, but more importantly, what we can do about it. Sorcery in the Bible it goes much deeper, and there's much more to it than simply using magic or what we call black magic today. Sorcery, as described and defined in the Bible, includes things like divination, which is fortune telling or soothsaying, seeing the future, necromancy, speaking to the dead. And that unfortunately is a common practice of people who are taught to pray to their dead relatives or to a dead saint. It also includes bestiality. Did you realize that bestiality is actually a form of sorcery? And there are other practices of evil as well. And all of these things are forbidden by our Creator if we choose to have a long, healthy, successful, productive, and joyous life. So what exactly is sorcery? Well, the Britannica Encyclopedia defines it as the practice of malevolent magic, meaning having to do with evil, of course, derived from casting lots as a means of divining the future in the ancient Mediterranean world. Some scholars distinguish sorcery from witchcraft by noting that it is learned rather than instinct. So you have to learn sorcery, right? Or, I'm sorry, you have to learn witchcraft. Sorcery is one of those things that you do by instinct. Other scholars noting that modern witches claim to learn their craft. So, this suggests that sorcery is intent of evil, always evil, and that witchcraft can be good or bad. Well, that really doesn't make any sense, does it? Now, researching this, I read this excerpt from, I think this came out of a thesis paper written by Dawn, I believe her last name is Spina, S-P-I-N-A. And she writes, before the Renaissance and the new acceptance of magic, there was a ruling Roman Empire. All magic was rejected by Rome and its followers, and thus magic entered into Europe on a negative note. It wasn't until the 13th century, the beginning of the Renaissance, that people began to look at magic in a new light. Being that Renaissance means rebirth or revival, it seems fitting that the rejection of magic was slowly diminishing. The study of magic was, in fact, began actively encouraged. It was something that was no longer seen as negative. Now, oh yeah, we can do that. She goes on to write that the people of the Renaissance began to believe that if the relationship between humans and the supernatural was strengthened, it would be largely beneficial to human life. End quote. So what we see is that even as the influence of the church was spreading throughout Europe, right, the influence of sorcery was also being accepted. And today, we use the terms white magic and black magic. White magic, of course, being the good witch, Wendy from Wizard of Oz, right? Black magic, of course, being the wicked witch of the West. Yeah, this gets interesting. Another person, Catherine Beyer, updated something she had written, and she writes, today many speakers consider white magic to be magic that is only beneficial to the caster or others, such as healing or divination, telling the future. Black magic is magic that is meant to cause harm to another person, what might be called a curse or a hex. The term white magic also sometimes implies spiritual magic. That really doesn't make a whole lot of sense either, does it? You see, that the folks have lost the original definitions, and they're attempting to change them in such a way so that some things may be accepted and some things aren't. When Scripture tells us it's all bad, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, with what she wrote, I had to ask, well, how is a hex defined now? And in today's world, a hex uses a charm of some type in an attempt to impart harm to another. That's where we get voodoo dolls from. It's a charm, and it attempts to harm other people. A curse, by today's definition, is either spoken or written with the intent to harm someone. Well, biblically speaking, that's not a curse. That's something kind of different. A curse in the Bible weakens something. You know, when the earth was cursed, what happened to it? It grew briars and brambles and had things that would stick you, sting you, or otherwise try to hurt you, which is similar but different, because prior to the earth being cursed, it was perfect. It was the perfect environment for mankind to thrive. You know, all of these things, when you start putting them together and looking at them very deeply, have a tendency to confuse you. And you've got to pick a standard for the definitions that you want to use. And for our purposes here, that standard has to be what's in the Bible, because anything else changes the definition of what we find in Scripture. That's why I'm kind of a stickler for definitions. You've got to agree on a definition before you use a word. I just upset a lot of the woke folks out there, I know. That's okay. There's over 100 references to sorcery or magic or witchcraft in the Bible. Probably, and well, I should say possibly, the most familiar is when King Saul went to the witch at Endor, and Myra's going to read that passage for us now.
The Philistines came together and made camp at Shunem. Saul gathered all the Israelites and made camp in Gilboa. When he saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. His heart pounded with fear. He prayed to the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him through dreams. Urim are prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium. I'll go and ask her what will happen." His servants answered, "There is a medium in Endor." Then Saul put on other clothes so that no one would know who he was. At night, Saul and his 2 men went to see the woman. Saul said to her, "Talk to a spirit for me. Call up the person I name." But the woman said to him, "Surely you know that what Saul has done. He has forced the mediums and fortune tellers out of the land of Israel. You are trying to trap me and kill me." Saul made a promise to the woman in the name of the Lord. He said, "As surely as the Lord lives, you won't be punished for doing this." The woman asked, "Whom do you want me to bring up for you?" He answered, "Bring up Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed loudly. She said, "Why have you tricked me? You are Saul." The king said to the woman, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" The woman said, "I see a spirit coming up out of the ground." Saul asked, "What does he look like?" The woman answered, "An old man wearing a coat is coming up." Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed face down on the ground. Samuel asked Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul said, "I am greatly troubled. The Philistines are fighting against me. God has left me. He won't answer me anymore, either by prophets or in dreams. That's why I called you. I want you to tell me what to do." 1 Samuel 28, verses 4 through 15.
Now, in case you're wondering, the Urim mentioned in verse 6 is actually part of the high priest's breastplate. So apparently, at this time, it may have actually been used as a type of a charm by the high priest to achieve guidance from the Creator. Not really sure that was something they were supposed to be doing, but they were doing it. Now, Saul he already knew that necromancy was forbidden. He knew what he was doing. And yet he sought out a witch to do just that. Now, the translation uses the word medium, but it is a sorcerer, a witch. And that in itself should be enough to tell us, nothing good can come from this, right? Saul had already rejected the Almighty. He had already done things that he knew he shouldn't be doing. And then he was wondering why, his God wasn't answering him in any way. He's letting Saul go down his own path, right? Now, while Saul is to blame for his own downfall, it all happened because he failed to be obedient. I mean, that's really all we can say, because that's just the way it is. Saul sought out a witch, but the spirit she brought up was not Samuel. The spirit was a familiar spirit that knew Samuel. When Saul says, "What did he look like?" apparently Saul couldn't see him. If Saul could have seen the spirit, he would have known it wasn't Samuel, right? So, here we have somebody, the king of Israel at the time, rejecting the Almighty and expecting the Almighty to take care of him. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. You see where all this is going, right? Now, because the act of necromancy was forbidden, do you think that the Almighty would allow Samuel to speak to Saul? If God himself is not going to talk to Saul, he's certainly not going to allow Samuel to do it either. And this is the only time in Scripture that this is mentioned. It's the only time that a king goes to a witch and says, "I need to talk to the prophet, the dead prophet." Hopefully all the other witches were smart enough to know what would happen. Think about that for a second. If the Almighty would have allowed Saul to talk to Samuel, what's to stop another king from going to another witch and say, "Hey, I need to talk to Moses about this. I need to talk to Abraham about this. I have a question for Jacob. I have a question for Noah." Do you see how these things can become, I don't want to say addictive, but habit forming? Now, some try to argue that the spirit was in fact Samuel. For one reason, what he said sort of happened. But the reality is that after hearing what the spirit said, Saul became so distraught, he was no longer a viable leader. He only heard his own defeat. Saul knew. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew he had stopped being obedient. He knew he was going his own way. The folks who think that this is really Samuel's spirit either forget or don't know that necromancy was actually practiced by most of the pagan religions who worshipped idols. And so those spirits would be unholy. They wouldn't come from the Creator. They would come from a different source. Some of us today would probably refer to those as demons, right? So instead of repentance and submission, Saul only dug his hole deeper. He went farther in the opposite direction. He became self-serving, and that is exactly why most people seek out sorcery today, right? I feel bad, so I want to talk to my dead relatives. I need to ask them forgiveness. I need to ask them direction. I want to be rich, so I want to know the lottery numbers. I want is the biggest reason for sorcery. Think about that. what we think of as witches, and in English also warlocks, male witches, it is the way we think about that today mainly comes from fiction. When I use the word witch, most people who have seen the movie The Wizard of Oz picture either Wendy or I can't remember the Wicked Witch's name. Anyway, you know the one I'm talking about, the one with the long nose and the wart, and she was green, straggly hair. You know, that's what they picture. They picture either the good witch or the wicked witch, the one who sends out the flying monkeys, right? Now, some people might, you know, if they're a little younger, might think about Elizabeth Montgomery and Bewitched. There is a reason that her mother was named Endora. And it comes from what Myra just read. She was at Endor. Bet y'all never thought about that, have you? Don't ever think that anything that you see, even in a fictitious setting, is by accident. Often, though, today's sorcerers don't think of themselves as witches. They picture themselves as helping others when they're only hurting everyone. You can't help someone by invoking evil onto someone else. It only hurts everyone involved. But you can pray to your Creator and ask Him to be involved to correct a situation His way. It might not always be the way we think it should be, but it will work out better for everyone when the Almighty does things His way. And we just stand back and let Him have it. You know, if you didn't listen to the episode on Christian witches, I said something like, it is impossible to use evil for your own purpose and expect good to come from it. You know, remember when Yeshua, Jesus, said you can't serve two masters? There cannot be any such thing as a Christian witch. It is simply impossible. And I have to mention this, the art of healing isn't magic. Okay? The folks who mix herbs and tonics for healing are not witches. They are what the King James Bible described as confectionaries. You can find that found in 1 Samuel 8:13, by the way. These are the people who have the skills to make healing ointments, salves, things that help cure illness or disease. But these things can't protect you from a hex or a curse. More on that in a minute. But while some might think that using herbal remedies is some ancient form of magic, it actually goes back to Genesis 1:29 and Ezekiel 47:12. In Ezekiel, it reads, along both banks of the river, fruit trees of all kinds grow. Their leaves will not wither, their fruit will not fail. Each month they will bear fruit because the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will be used for food, and their leaves will be used for healing. The problem is that's a bad translation. The word healing in this case is actually the word medicine. You see, our Creator provides for us, and in His creation, the remedies to heal us. You know, not to treat our wounds like, you know, doctors today, they like to treat things. When I go to the doctor, I want them to heal things, right? Fix it, make it better. If you take your car to a mechanic and he says, oh yeah, we can treat this problem, but you have to bring it in once a month for us to keep working on it. You'd think the guy didn't know what he was doing, right? Why don't we do that with doctors? No, doc, I'm not coming back. Fix it. If you can't fix it, I'll go find somebody who can. We've just spent 3 years going through that. Right?
Yes, we have.
The black magic we know today does just the opposite. It doesn't heal. It inflicts wounds in most cases. Not always physical, more often emotional. The weakness we get from the curse, it allows disease. What some people sometimes refer to as bad luck. A lot of us think of these things that happen to us and we consider ourselves unfortunate, unlucky. One of my favorite sayings is, it's bad luck to be superstitious. If you've been listening for very long, you've probably heard me say that. It's not about luck. It's about obedience. Which brings us to how we protect ourselves from the hexes and curses of black magic. And the answer is really, really easy. You live the way you're designed to live. And I'll go back to a verse we've used over and over and over again because I can't say it enough. It's found in Exodus 15:26. If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and will do which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases upon thee that I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, and it actually says Jehovah right there, who heals you. Why here, you might ask? Each of the plagues that happened to the Creator, each of the plagues that happened is the Creator attacking the specific belief of every pagan god in Egypt. And that's actually every pagan god. Okay? Everything that happened to the Egyptians, from the blood in the water to the death of the firstborn, he attacked it, he squashed it, and he killed it. Each and every one. And along with that, we can also add all of their diseases, all of their illnesses, all of their sickness, all of their catastrophes, including their famine that brought Joseph into the land of Egypt. I should probably add that part. So, we have that that's one promise, one of the promises that center around keeping us safe, keeping us protected. How often in the Bible do we read, if we submit ourselves to the Creator, and it is Him alone, we're going to have rain in our season, our storehouses will be full, we'll have that long, productive, successful, joyous life, right? There's actually another promise of protection, and a lot of people don't see it this way. They want to get a little tunnel vision here. Isaiah 54:17 should be familiar to most of you. No weapon that's formed against you will defeat you. You will show that those who speak against you are wrong. These are the good things my servants receive. Their victory comes from me, says Jehovah. Now, this includes the hexes and the curses of the people who would try to use evil to harm you, because the word weapon isn't restricted to what we might think like a gun or a knife or a cannon or a nuclear bomb. It actually means an article or utensil or even a vessel, like the charms, the voodoo dolls. But it can also mean jewelry, it can mean equipment, and that list goes on and on and on. I said a while ago that when you shine a light on evil, when it's confronted by righteousness, evil becomes confused and it becomes enraged. Now think about that for a second. Have you ever watched the videos of Hitler's speeches after he's been in power for a while and things are starting to not go real well in Germany during World War II? He is completely enraged. He's confused. He doesn't know exactly what he's saying most of the time. I have a friend of mine who would argue with me on that, but that's okay. When you begin to shine that light on evil, it becomes enraged. It does things. It becomes dangerous because they just start throwing stuff to the wall and seeing what sticks is the saying we used to use around here, right? Let's throw something against the wall and see what sticks. That's what evil does. Look around the world today, and that's exactly what's going on. You know, Hitler's reign of terror began with just a few people who thought, you know, maybe he can he can make a difference. He should be okay. He's certainly better than what we had. But how did it end? It ended with the destruction of the physical destruction of many, many nations in Europe and the near complete destruction of Japan. You see, you have to be willing to follow the Creator's instructions to the best of your ability. Not just, you can't just try to get by. You've actually got to be actively pursuing doing the most you can. Do you think Daniel would have survived the lion's den if he'd have just been, well, I know I'm supposed to be doing this, but, Lord, will you really care if if I don't talk to you for a while? Do you think he would have survived? You need to do the most, not the least. Deuteronomy 5:33 says, you must walk, I love this, you must walk in all the ways that Jehovah your God has commanded, so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days in the land that you possess. Now, some people might try to argue that that was a communal thing, meaning it's only, it's restricted to the land of Israel. But if you are a believer and you're doing everything you can to the best of your ability, and you possess a piece of property, whether you own it outright, whether you lease it, whether you rent it, your days will be prolonged. There's no need to fear the sorcerers. We need to see them for what they are, and it doesn't matter if it's a talking mouse or a green wicked witch or even that pretty Samantha Stevens. Witches have rejected the Creator for the created. And I'm not talking about somebody who dabbles in, what's the word I want to use? Where they use the healing oils and that kind of thing. That's not the people I'm talking about. That's not a witch as described and defined in Scripture. Those are the ones who are using their skills to heal, using the provisions given to us by the Almighty. I have heard them called white witches, but that's not a white witch. That's different. Witches are self-serving. They are just like the leeches, just like the parasites. They feed from the host until the host dies, and then they move on. They look for another. Have you ever talked to somebody who's been to a fortune teller? Oh, they come back and it's like, oh, so-and-so said I'm going to do this. So-and-so said I'm going to do that. It's going to be a great day. How do you know? Well, they looked in my stars and they said, you're going to have a good day today. You're going to meet the person of your dreams. You're going to fall in love, and it's just going to be a wonderful life. And you go back the next week and, oh, it's terrible. Why? I got sick. I thought it was supposed to be a wonderful life. Well, I don't know what I did. Well, I can tell you what you did. This ain't rocket science, folks. Right? You're just like Saul. You're going somewhere you're not supposed to be going. You're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. You're following your own way, not the Creator's way. Both of you can't walk different paths on the same road. It just doesn't work like that. Just like you can't have Christian witches. It's impossible. You can have people who go to church and bring evil into the church. That happens all the time. But what mostly happens is you wind up with a divided fellowship. And some of the people remain faithful to the Almighty, and the others go a different direction. They fed from the host until the host died, and then they moved on. Don't allow yourself to be taken in by fictitious fairy tales or, historical or even hysterical practices of the ignorant. Witches don't melt when you throw water on them. They don't fly on a broomstick. And they are certainly not cute or harmless. But when we actually serve the Creator, remember what it said? My servants. Right? When you serve the Creator, He will protect you from all evil. And that includes sorcery, deviation, and everything that goes with it. Don't go down the path. It's dangerous. And even just doing the research is tough. Because you got to read through all this stuff that doesn't make sense. And you've got to attempt to sort through what you think that the person who was writing it was talking about. Because they're using the wrong language. We talked about that a few episodes ago. Theft is stealing your communication. If you're not using the language, if you're not defining things properly, it allows evil in. And you can be taken in by the witches. You can be taken in by the sorcerers. You can be taken in by the fortune tellers. You can be taken in by the people who, I talked to your Aunt Mabel, and she just thinks you're doing great down here. I can pretty much guarantee you that person did not talk to your Aunt Mabel. It's not allowed. The Almighty will not stand for it. It can't happen. So don't be taken in. Instead, be the good servant. Live the life that your Creator designed you to live. Did you have anything you wanted to add to any of that?
Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you on Monday.
Oh, ye of few words. Until Monday morning, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you for listening. Pray for the folks in Great Britain. They are mourning a great loss this evening. Take care and many, many blessings.